It is 5 o'clock. We're going to begin our committee of the whole meeting. We have all council members present. The first thing we have up is approval of the minutes for our committee of the whole meeting from March 8th, 2022. Were there any corrections, concerns, changes?
None that I saw. Anybody else?
If there are none, I'll take a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the committee of the whole minutes for March 8th, 2022.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Can I just ask one question real quick?
Sure.
Can we go and visit the Jordan landfill sometime? It was on the first page. And I was just wondering if we could set up some kind of, or I would like to go see it again. So
Thanks, Jennifer.
thank you.
All right, and just to check, was anyone opposed to the minutes? I didn't know. Okay, just checking. I didn't want you to miss your opportunity. All right, we've got 3 discussion items this evening, and we're starting off with 2022 legislative summary with GL, David, and Corey.
Thanks. For those of you who don't know our lobbyists, 2 sitting in front of you, David Stewart, Corey Holdaway, they're the 2 who spend the 45 days and more on the Hill speaking with legislators and protecting the city's interests. We appreciate what they do. This is one of the favorite times of the year, I think, is to have them come and kind of give us an overview of the session, their impressions of where the legislature is going, and then any detailed comments they have on specific bills are welcomed as well. So I'll let you 2 take it from here.
There we go. Got her done. Thank you, GL, for the opportunity to address the council, and on behalf of David and myself, we're grateful for the opportunity to represent Murray. Murray is a unique, we don't need to tell you, I mean, unique city, because you do all the things that other cities don't in terms of water, school districts, you do it all, and it's a pleasure to represent you. So as far as the interests for the city during the legislative session. I also want to represent or recognize Councilman Rosalba Dominguez, who spent a lot of time on the Hill during some of the League of Cities and Town meetings. She was there, and grateful for her input during the session. This, much like a lot of the sessions we go into, we go in with a lot of apprehension and not sure what to expect, and largely at the end of the day, I think the legislature does their business, and for the most part will take the input from cities because of the League of Cities and Towns. I want to just compliment the League of Cities and Towns and what they do on behalf of the cities across the state. And Murray's unique because the executive director for the League of Cities and Towns is a former Murrayite, Cameron, and he does a great job. I've given to GL the League of Cities and Towns legislative summary, and if you haven't had a chance to look at that, I would just encourage you to do that. It's a legislative wrap-up that is on their webpage. I should have made copies for each of the council members, but I do have one copy. This goes through each of the bills that were prioritized by the League, and breaks them up according to the various interests of the cities. And for Murray, one of the bills that I want to just draw your attention to is House Bill 462. This is a bill that was sponsored by Representative Waldrop and Senator Anderegg. This is a bill dealing with the land use and affordable housing issue, and it makes some adjustments from the last legislative session, Senate Bill 34. It goes into some more details in terms of just details around the plans for density. Thank you. Density. It gives you some specific requirements that have changed. I'm sure the city's already aware of it, but the dates around those requirements have changed. There's a priority document that the league also puts out, House Bill 462, which I've also made available to GL, and it goes into a lot of that. So I would just encourage the city to pay attention to that. There are some opportunities for funding with ARPA funds and TIF funds that are enhanced because of that bill. And I know David was very active in terms of, as he always is, with the transportation funding for the city. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that, or.
Yeah, I mean, this year was obviously a year we didn't have the famous quarter of the quarter. Usually it's about every couple of years. So I would anticipate next year there'll be some buildup in the fund to do that. But this and a few other issues really took the focus. And again, there's some positives. There's also, as always with the legislature, there's a few clubs in there that and I don't anticipate Murray would be a problem, but it was more for other communities that aren't taking density and trying to address some homelessness and different options throughout their city. And it kind of has some carrots and some sticks to try and help drive. And it's not necessarily even any one solution, but at least making the discussion happen to come up with some solution and not a one size fits all. And it works a lot through transit and through other things like that, and through the Wasatch Front Regional Council and things. So that'll be something, certainly, as Corey said, there are some key dates, and again, there's a plenty long of a runway to work through that. And I would guess, as we talk kind of pre-session, I think Murray has done a lot of these things, and I think it'll be playing on the edges a little bit, kind of putting things maybe into compliance or working through that. And so I don't anticipate that being an issue.
So we're okay. I mean, not anything that we really need to be concerned about at this point.
If I wouldn't say, I'd say GL needs, I don't anticipate, let's put it this way. It wasn't crafted in a way it was certainly crafted in a way to motivate other cities. I don't anticipate that Murray is in alignment with those cities and the problems they're having, because you guys actually are working to address, through affordability and other things as we've talked. So on its surface, now, not to say there's not unintended consequences or it doesn't sweep up others, that if we're not doing something, that's why I say certainly we'll want GL and others to look through and make sure, like I say, I think tweaking at most, because another reason I say we're not is we're not one of the bad actors that this bill was really driving to try and get motivated. They've tried for a while to incentivize and to encourage for the last couple of years, and there's just been some holdouts, namely up in Summit County and other areas like that really are driving a lot of this bill to kind of start putting out, again, more of a stick, if you will, that if they're not going to try and address those types of issues. And as well as, Salt Lake City certainly has issues, and some of the other, Ogden and different things like that. But again, I certainly don't want to say don't worry about it, but it wasn't targeted at us, but we'll want to make sure we go through that.
Can I just say also, so Zach has been looking at this from the beginning. There'll be a few changes here and there, and he'll bring this to you. I was just talking to you a few minutes ago, 3 or 4 times between now and September. So you'll see what the changes are. But what David's saying is absolutely right. We have, I don't know if we've been on the leading edge, but we've done a lot to encourage affordable housing. And so it's not like we're starting from ground zero like a few places will be.
The housing issue too is, what they're looking at in terms of just station area planning, as far as transit goes, and what you all have been doing around that is much farther along than some of the other areas. So I think as the plan is further developed and submitted, the one thing I will say different than in the past is the Department of Workforce Services has the responsibility for approving the plan. You submit it, and then DWS approves it, unlike the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization. I'm sure your planning office will be all over that. and make sure that that's done so that you'll qualify for the additional funds that are
Yeah.
available. The funds that are available are some of the ARPA funds that the federal government had designated. And I would just encourage you to take advantage of those where you can. So,
Okay, that's not part of what we've already received then. That's additional.
No, it's additional.
no, I think it's some additional opportunities.
From my understanding, it is additional, and DWS, the way we report our housing and affordability, right, will also be reported differently within this new legislation. So, and it's supposed to be more simplified than it was in the past, somewhat.
Yeah.
Okay, I think they're still figuring all the details out, is what I understood, and just so you guys are also aware, I did testify because we are one of the only cities that do have a plan, and some cities do not.
Yeah.
I mean, and that was I sat in that committee, and it was interesting to see the conversations being had, but I think overall we're way further on in that and we're a part of that conversation too.
Yep.
So
It's one of the things I worry about. I want to make sure we're doing what we can in terms of housing and affordable housing. So good. Okay.
The other bill I'd like to throw
I'm
out.
sorry, really quick. Can I ask you a question
Yes.
just generally? Because I'm not sure that's been addressed. How long have you all been representing us in Murray?
I think this is my third year.
Third year. And what others do you represent other cities?
I do not.
You do not. So you're solely focused on Murray.
No, I do. I've been representing Murray 8 years. Yeah, I think 8 or more years. And I do represent some other cities, somewhat a little bit like Murray, in that cities that largely don't have kind of Republican representation, generally speaking, and are unique as far as have interests and things that aren't fully satisfied through the league and stuff like that. The other city I do work for, Park City, Salt Lake City, and West Valley City.
Okay. And when you guys, I noticed in here, there's an explanation about how we get what the city's position is, but is it the mayor who ultimately makes that call on if we're going to support it or not? Or you're just gathering information and you all determine this is good for Murray, this is not?
So this is my report.
This is your report.
This is my report. Yeah.
So you're the one making these decisions on support or oppose?
At times, I
Okay.
talk to the mayor's office. Sometimes we talk,
Okay.
and then sometimes it's just obvious, and sometimes it's not.
Okay.
But we also have voting members. So, right. So it's all that. And then how many do we have? Three? or
Three. That's right.
Three.
3 voting members
then
that
there's-
make, so you guys get together and make a decision whether we're going to support something or not?
No, this is when the league gets together,
I
the
got you.
policy committee.
Okay.
That's when the vote happens.
Great.
There's
Just
a
trying to
weekly
get it all
meeting.
understood.
There's a weekly meeting held by the league each Monday
Okay.
where positions are taken on the various bills that are impacting municipalities. And your 3 votes are Councilwoman Dominguez and the mayor and GL.
Okay. And so, but I do notice there's times where the Utah League and the city disagree on their, and so that ultimately comes down to, we voted a different way potentially at the Utah League of Cities and Towns and came up, and so you guys
And
recognize
then we
that.
will take the city's
Understood.
position on,
Okay.
on that.
Great.
And it's Murray is a little bit different, has a challenge. I'll be perfectly frank with you. You have a bit of a challenge because you don't have anybody in the majority party
Right.
representing you in the legislature. So as such, it takes a little bit of effort for us to be able to have the impact that
We're here
that
too.
other cities may not have, like Utah County. I'll
Right.
throw that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's true. Also, when you have good idea but oppose.
I'm sorry.
There. We
That was me, Diane.
Oh, Senate Bill 110.
That was me.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Good idea.
If you look at the
Yeah.
fundamental things we talk about, like local control and things like that, there are things the legislature proposes where you think, I like that idea, but should have come from us. So that's kind of
Yeah, and it's interesting, when we were in DC, that was something that Representative Curtis, if you guys recall, brought up, where he said that the city should have more control and power and things. So
That's because he was a
It's
mayor.
always a unique dance because the state legislature looks at the federal government and says, well, you guys, you should let us do it. And then they take control of the city, and
Right.
it's like kind of a dance that goes on, unfortunately. The other issue that I just want to at least apologize to you all about is there was a bill that I had a client that I was representing, the puppy mill. Well, it wasn't puppy mill. It was represented as a puppy mill bill, but because of my representing you and also them, I let them know that I would no longer be representing them, and that bill ultimately was not passed thanks to the work of David, and I backed away.
Thank you, Corey.
Well,
David.
and in defense of Corey, he actually brought up in our pre-session meeting that he had this, and I think, and we talked, and at the time, I think the thought was since we had an ordinance in place, and when it came out and it was going to preempt all local, I think that's when you guys ended up getting concerned. And to Corey's credit, as soon as GL sent out, we're strongly opposed. This, we have an ordinance that will now be preempted that we worked closely with the Humane Society and others to do. This is a big issue for us, and so Corey immediately kind of stepped aside and gave me the opportunity to go in. And ironically, the person running the bill, this is where two worlds collide, is actually my cousin, who's in the state legislature. And he comes from an agriculture background. And so he had some agricultural interests that deal with animals and things where he runs into the Humane Society and others that get into his world. And so that's where, and Corey's client they had similar interests. And so he was running one bill and they kind of mirrored them together and was able to get him to back off of that. And then he had a second wind where it got slid into another bill at the last minute. And so everybody lost their mind and we were able to rip it back out the last day of session. And it was created a lot of fireworks. After, it's funny, you get all the major bills like the one Corey just went over kind of worked out, or at least, finalized, and kind of everybody takes that deep breath. And that's when all these kind of candidly stupid things start coming up at the end and it starts to get creative. They start finding vehicles to start pushing things in here and there. And so that's when it gets a little crazy, but ultimately we're able to defeat that now. But full disclosure, it's coming back next year. My understanding is, though, again, this will be my cousin doing it. It's going to be purely from the agricultural perspective. So I don't anticipate that it would affect us and affect any ordinances or things. It's going to deal in that world only is what his efforts are. And so that was, we were trying to work that out at the end of session, but it was one of those at the last minute where there was too much confusion. So I got him just to agree to bury it at the end of session and come back, work through the interim to make sure that, because there were concerns from other cities, Salt Lake City runs their horse carriages and things like that. And so there were some unintended consequences grabbing some of those types of things where you were doing, treating animals and livestock for profit, and how did that grab it? And so trying to craft a solution that addresses the rural needs, but doesn't really get in the middle of some of the urban efforts to work on issues that are obviously different in those two communities. So
what bill was that?
That was 476, House Bill 476. And again, that being one of those, and that's where I think, we're certainly helpful, is the league cared, but it wasn't, the league had been slaying dragons all session, and this wasn't one, but there was certainly, Salt Lake City, Murray City, Cottonwood Heights, handful of other cities, Sandy and a few others were very passionate and had dealt with this issue. And so that's where, it was funny, I ran into all kinds of lobbyists for other cities I hadn't seen all session, and they suddenly really cared, and was able to make them all look good when we got the bill to go away. So.
Yeah, I give hats off to Corey. You jumped on that so quick when we called you, and really, I thought this is going to be hard. You made it very easy for us, so thanks.
So, that largely is, as far as interim goes, I think what we need to continue to kind of monitor is the affordable housing issue. That will continue to be an issue with Representative Waldrop and Senator Anderegg continuing to work on those issues. And then beyond that, just the maintaining the sovereignty of local control being kind of the important thing. You've got an opportunity, obviously, with the elections this cycle. Each of the members of the House are up for election. And as you all know, when you're up for election, you become a little more in tune to your constituency. So if you have issues that you're concerned about, please let them know of your concern and let us know, and we can communicate that to them as well. So as the election goes forward, I think we'll have opportunities to have those interactions with legislators.
And as we mentioned earlier, one of the difficulties at times is there's not a member of the majority caucus, but what you do have are several members of the minority who actually are very responsive and are great on the municipal issues. Unfortunately, they're not generally driving the overall policy. And so I continue to communicate with them, but I want to make sure that we're very clear on that they're great to work with. They're always seeking out either Corey, myself, or the mayor, or GL or others, and are very responsive there and certainly believe in that local control and are supportive. It's just, there's just not a lot of them. And so that kind of becomes a struggle. And touch a little bit on elections. So as Corey mentioned, we're at the, we just finished redistricting at a state level, national level, but at a state level. So districts have gotten changed up a little bit. There seems to be a little anti-incumbent mentality out there. There's a lot more primaries that have happened in the county conventions. This Saturday will be the state convention. There's quite a few challenges we'll see, but most of the county conventions so far, a majority of those have ended up in primaries. And I think, for a myriad of different issues, I think part of it's just people are frustrated and mad and general things. And this is something they can kind of focus on. And so we'll see that now, kind of other major elections after November. You'll have your leadership elections. Both the speaker and the president of the Senate have indicated they plan to run for re-election, and doesn't look like anybody will oppose them. And so we'll see, they will certainly be the same. There'll be a few changes other than that, but largely it will be the same makeup for the next 2 years from a legislative leadership perspective. Obviously, the governor isn't up until 2 more years, so he'll be the same. And so from an election perspective, and kind of so you understand scheduling wise, you get out of session, everybody kind of disperses. Everybody's focused right now on their elections. They take April off. May will be the first interim where they kind of adopt their study items throughout. They'll meet monthly. They'll take off either July or August, depending on, because they have national meetings they go to.
July.
It's July this year. So they'll take July off, and then they'll continue on through November, meeting monthly, and we'll start to see early in May and June. Now, as has been the last few years, I think we'll continue to see quite a few bills dealing with local control, dealing with cities and stuff. We'll more on housing and other issues like that. This last year was obviously huge on water infrastructure and funding there. I mean, it was a unique year. You guys have certainly, I'm sure, seen it at a local level from sales tax dollars, but the state, between sales tax growth, income tax growth, and just money, stupid money that the federal government's been throwing around, they had a couple $2 billion of money that was kind of parsed out. They put $1 billion into the TIF program for transportation, for road projects. Now, a lot of that kind of stuff is getting eaten up through inflation and other things. All these projects now are costing 10, 20, 30% more. And so there is a big piece of that. But, quite a few things funded at the state level. I know when we talked early on, we were talking about the Murray Theater. One of the things.
That's what I was going to ask. We can't get $2 million for the Murray Theater. So what's up with that?
The problem we run into there is you have, from a state legislative perspective, of looking at saying, well, they see more on the locals received ARPA dollars and other things, and there were a lot of people pushing. So what they ended up doing is, for all those types of requests, they block granted some chunks of money to heritage and arts, and kind of have been trying to, and made their biggest step this year, the last couple of years, of getting more and more out of that business, as far as being the ones to request for theaters and for festivals and all those types of projects. They have been kind of getting frustrated. It's been driven largely by the appropriation chairs in both the House and the Senate to say, look, this is, we're tired of there's not really a great evaluation of things, and there's others that really are in this community better than us. So their effort has been to kind of try to say no and push that money to the heritage and arts. So there will be an opportunity to apply for grants through that. That will largely be starting after July 1st. So we'll want make sure you have staff and stuff reviewing that process, but that's where they sent most of the money is for in this arena, or they didn't really fund many unless you were a key member of leadership that really had a key project
Yeah,
that you really,
right.
really wanted. And unfortunately, our member of leadership was minority leadership that was seeking funding, and so that was not going to get funded. But most of that stuff got pushed to Heritage and Arts.
And Dave, just so you know, we have been contacted
Good.
by them, and Kim Sorensen's working on it. Dale Cox called us, and Gene Davis has
Good.
been involved. So they've given us a lot of hope that we will
Good,
get
I
it. I
hope
mean,
so.
I don't know what'll happen, but
Well, it sounds like we need to apply for some.
and Kim Sorensen's working with them.
Great, Kim. Okay.
And then one other funding item of note is last year, the legislature did a special session, put $50 million of ARPA to a local grant, local match program that they ended up receiving $1 billion worth of requests to match against the 50 million. I know Murray City put in a handful, did not make the cut. Through the session, I've been talking to GL and to your Public Works, and I've found out those, and so there's been another 25 million put towards that. And this last year, we unfortunately, and my fault, we didn't communicate on making sure to help shepherd that through. And so, as that 25 million happens this summer, it'll be my plan to certainly get something funded there for us. Probably the tune between $500,000 and $1 million. I think we're one of the projects, and so obviously there'll be another, I'm sure, $500 million. There'll be there's tons of need out there, but the good thing is a lot of it all looks the same on paper as far as every community needs it and is justified in getting it. It's just understanding how to get it through. So that's something that's certainly on my radar to work through this summer and working to seek funding there. And then, like I said, next year I would anticipate, and I'll work with, again, Public Works as well to identify I'm hopeful there'll be another kind of quarter-to-quarter bill to start looking at helping fund some of our local roads and get some things. So I'll be working with them on what our priorities would be leading into next session.
Great. We need your help. So
Excellent. Jill?
Do you have any other questions? Okay.
Go. Oh,
Do you have questions, Ben?
Leave?
I do.
Well, then go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you for being here. On page 45, the Jordan River Parkway, what does that mean for Murray?
There was additional funding that was approved for expanding the work that's been done on the Jordan River Parkway from West Valley City going south to where Murray is at. Unfortunately, I don't think Murray, I think the funding that has been approved is largely the West Valley City part of that. So
Okay.
I think it was $500,000 that was appropriated for it.
Okay.
And that was largely the work done by Representative Winder from West Valley
Right.
City.
Mike.
Yeah.
That's been his baby for several years now.
Yeah.
And he's leaving.
He's left.
Yes.
Yeah. He's
He's already left.
Yeah, he's the city manager now at Mill Creek, and so
Okay.
he resigned, and or actually, I guess, is he officially? Did he?
I
Is
don't
he
think
going
he
to serve?
resigned. He's
Okay,
gonna serve that
Yeah,
out
he
of
didn't
service.
run. I guess
He's
he didn't
just
run
not running
again.
for re-election.
Yeah, that's right. He served through the session.
Okay. And I appreciate on page 47 the bereavement leave amendment. SB 63. Thank you for doing that. I think everyone should have that are working citizens. Let's see. I think on page 7, HB 36, it's Commission on Housing Affordability and Amendment. What does this mean for Murray City? Are we talking about apartments?
So this is one that establishes a subcommittee under the Unified Economic Opportunity Commission. It doesn't right now necessarily do anything for the city or against the city, but this is the subcommittee is going to provide recommendations on how the state should address moderate income housing.
In fact,
That will come down to us through the space and time, but right now it's the state is working.
yeah, and I think that bill largely was just a reconfiguration of the committee.
It extended
recall.
it. It was supposed to be repealed, so it extended the repeal date and tweaked a few of the membership to continue reviewing it. So they're continuing the work they've been doing for the last couple of years.
That's the reason that's included, Pam, also is just to show that the legislature is focused on housing affordability, and that will filter down to us one way or another.
And that's part of the work that Representative Waldrop and Senator Anderegg are continuing to work on.
Because the word I circled was rehabilitation of replacement units or new construction. So I was just curious but if that's going to be relooked at or whatever, then I just had
In
to.
terms of definitions,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know the answer to that, Councilwoman.
Okay. I think that's. I don't know if I should bring this up, so I'm going to wait and talk to Jared on another one that I noticed that I have a question on, and it's the 1 mile radius of those locations, HB 462. And so I just had a question about the mile radius of those locations. And yeah, and
I have kind of a tag question with that I think will answer a lot of questions in here.
Okay.
And so I don't want to cut you off, but I think it'll like kind of bring this together. So first, I just thank you for this huge report. Members of the public who are curious, I hope that they'll go to the online resources and read it. It's a lot of bill information. From here, I already got a message from a resident who's really excited about HB 121, which is the water conservation modifications. There's some funding. Yay. We love when there's funding involved with something to flip some turf, some grass to Xeriscape. And he said, okay, when are we doing it? Like today? Like, how do I apply for this grant today? So from these bills, I know Jared's going to be coming before us and Zach with a lot of cleanup bills from here. I think just maybe an explanation of from these bills into practice where we're sitting on voting on changes and cleanups and how they impact us. What does this look like for us from here?
So a lot of those bills will not actually become law until May or July. And in the meantime, Jared and Zach will be working on any changes like the flip the strip type of thing, where we cannot require lawn in that area. So the way it looks is really a lot of activity over the next several months, and then coming back to you and having you approve the changes in the ordinances.
And from there, we'll have opportunities to ask questions on
Yes.
every
Yes.
single bill, ordinance, language change, as whether it's mandatory or whether we're wanting to go above or beyond or whatever that looks like. We'll have those debates and discussions, ordinance by ordinance. They come forward. Does that answer? It'll be fine, Zach. It's going to be fine. He's
On
It's
top
fine.
of everything else.
any other questions or before we move on?
Thank you.
Thank
It's a
you
lot of
both.
fun.
Thank you for
So
that.
thanks for being here.
Yes, thank
Thanks.
you. GL, thank
Thank
you,
you.
Rosalba, for
Thanks, you
all of
too.
your work this session, and enjoy the 3 hours between now and the interim. Have a
Corey,
little break.
enjoy the sun.
Oh, I just wanted to recognize my business partner as well, who was helpful with this, Audrey Wood.
Thanks for being here,
Thank you,
Audrey. We appreciate you. All right. Next up, discussion on a memorandum of understanding for the 4,800 lofts, and we've got Zachary Smallwood and Jared on backup. On deck.
Yeah. So while I'm pulling this up, because I cannot help myself, I'll just mention that for the xeriscaping, we actually already allow it. We don't require grass in your landscape strip. Sorry, my head's a little fuzzy. I have a really bad cold, so I'm going to stumble a lot tonight. But as long as there's planted material, you're allowed to put in, xeriscaping, like a mix of rocks and shrubs and things like that. So for your constituent, they can do it right now. Public Works does have a flip the strip program that operates. And so I would suggest calling probably Corey Wells.
I think they're looking though for the larger, not the park strip. They
Oh,
want
okay.
funding for the full yard
Okay,
to,
yeah, that's going to be
to
something
wood
that-
chip situation.
for sure. Yeah,
Which-
that will take time.
So they want to apply today.
And I will note the park strip ordinance is challenging to adhere to. I did the process through Jordan Valley Water Conservation because they're the ones who came out and did it. It's not the easiest piece to adhere to. They require like 60% living, has to be on a separate sprinkler system. There's a lot of things that are required for that. But then Murray City came in and tore up a bunch of people's park strips and allowed them to put rocks in. So
Depends on
we
whose
need to make
water-
sure we follow our own ordinances as they're in place because we did that on my street just this last.
Yeah, that largely depends on kind of what water district you're part of.
Okay.
So if you are in Jordan Valley Water Conservancy, I don't think you'd be able to apply for Murray City's water flip the strip. You have to be a Murray water
Yeah.
user. So,
It is, but
okay.
we still have to adhere to Murray's rules.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself. I had to talk about it. So,
Go ahead.
yeah, thank you for your time tonight, you guys. So this application is from IMH 4800 Lofts. This request is authorizing the mayor to sign a memorandum of understanding for a mixed-use project at 447 West, 4800 South. So a couple things I wanted to touch on why we're here tonight. So in October of 2021, the Planning Commission approved the project of the 4800 Lofts, which is a mixed use, a horizontal mixed use, meaning that there are elements that are the retail may be a little separated or from the residential aspects, kind of like the Kmart site, for example. But this one actually has some residential detached and some of it actually attached to the buildings as well. So this is all being approved under the prior mixed use code. This is not the new mixed use code after the moratorium. Thank you. I'm sorry. So they were vested ahead of time, so they were actually able to apply for this. So they have been approved under those prior codes. The Planning Commission reviewed it under those codes and granted approval under those codes. So tonight, the City Council is authorized. Your role as an administrative body in this aspect is to authorize the mayor to sign the memorandum of understanding. To be blunt, it's not a re-review of the project because that was delegated to the Planning Commission. So the MOU is a contract, and the City Council are the only body that's allowed to enter into contracts. The Planning Commission can't enter into contracts. It's only the legislative body that can do that. So we'll get into it. So the project is located in the red. They have recently combined all these lots into one, so it is one single lot now. As I mentioned, it was in the previous MU zone, which is mixed use. That's been changed to the Murray Central mixed use zone. So the elements of the memorandum of understanding is to memorialize three key aspects specific for this project. The first is the phasing of the project, which is to make sure that we don't get all of the residential up front without any of the commercial or retail establishments as part of that. So as you can see in phase one, let me get my little laser pointer back. So here in phase one, we have a majority of the retail area, which is in this corner here attached to this residential building. And then we have a standalone retail building, which is here. Phase two would include this large residential building with this retail component here. And then also there is another small retail component here with another residential building. So this has gone through back in October. It was reviewed by all the city departments, engineering, fire, power, all those fun people. All of their conditions were part of that. So they know what they need to do. It's a total of 371 units across the three buildings. And then there is approximately I apologize. I can't remember off the top of my head. About 18,000 square feet of commercial between the three commercial aspects. So this information is just to kind of give you an idea of what it's going to look like. This is, so if for any reason the developer comes back to us in the planning division and says, we want to change something, it would have to most likely conform with the new regulations. So it would limit that density, limit that, or change the parking calculations. However, we can make minor tweaks. So for the reason I bring this up is, say like they decide they don't like this green color on the building, they can, or any other color, and that they can decide that they want to change there, and that's okay. We usually can approve that at staff level. So this is kind of giving you an idea. This is the, let me go back actually. This is the standalone retail building that'll face on 4800 South right up here. This is the first phase residential and retail building. It will be, this will face 48th and kind of that private access drive there, and then the residential above it. This is just spinning it around 360 degrees. So the other aspect that the Memorandum of Understanding is going to be governing is they did something a little more unique. They had to provide publicly available open space for people. And how they approached that is through rooftop amenities. So above the commercial aspects, here highlighted in yellow, that is going to be publicly available and open for people to go and dine or hang out, anything they want to do. So as part of the Memorandum of Understanding, we wanted to make sure that was in that contract, that will remain open at all times. That's not something that at any time in the future they can close off. I think that's really important to make sure that we have that. And I anticipate this to change a little bit. This was just them giving me renderings, because you're not going to have a publicly available pool.
I have a quick
unfenced.
question about that.
Sure.
How would the public access the rooftop? I mean, how would we know? Because I like, for instance, in DC, you have to live in those spaces to go onto the rooftop.
And they have talked to us about that. Let me. Is this going to do anything?
Because I think it's great. You would totally see the mountains from there.
So if you can kind of see, there are these steps here that are right adjacent to up to that area. So it's not, it's.
Oh, so it would be on that landing.
Yeah,
not
it
like
would be on this
of the-
landing here, and then they will have ADA accessible.
I thought it was on the very top, Gary.
ADA accessible accessibility up to those rooftop spaces as well.
Okay,
it's
so it
not
would be the first story rooftop, not like the.
yeah, not the
okay.
very tip top, but
I
the
thought-
first story rooftop.
I was like, wait, I would love to go at the very top. That
and you might
sounds
still
amazing.
you might still like it up on top of this first floor as
no,
well.
no. I want to go to the very top.
So that's on building. They've labeled their buildings weird, but so that kind of speaks to that here as well. I've explained to them that it's really important to make sure that they put signage on it, you know, explaining that this is publicly available, that people are welcome to come up here, and that's something I'm really going to be watching for in their building permit applications. Is making sure I see that kind of signage.
Well, I love the concept. So
Yeah, definitely.
Continue on.
All right, so this is kind of the monster. This is the second. This is the phase 2 residential building. So there was a concern with fire and emergency access getting through. And I apologize. I'm going to go back to the site plan for a moment. Having emergency access through this site here. They needed some sort of fire exit. So Another kind of interesting and innovative thing they've done is provide a, I believe, 14-foot opening through the building to allow for emergency access. It will be publicly accessed. It won't be gated off. It won't be restricted in any way. So people can actually go through that. So it's almost like a tunnel through the building to get access to here and allow for emergency services to go through. That's the third aspect of this MOU, is to make sure that that's memorialized, that will remain open and accessible for emergency services at all times. So you can kind of see that here a little bit. It's that big opening here. So then again, this is the retail portion on the inside of the lot of that building with that 14-foot access here. And then again, this will also have a rooftop amenity highlighted here in yellow. This will be publicly available and accessible, pretty much incorporated into the retail component, ADA accessible, all that fun stuff. This back here will be the private to the residents of this complex here.
So is that rooftop?
Yes. Yep. So this will all three.
I mean, the way on,
Yep. So this will be rooftop here. Again, that you can kind of see the steps up to it.
She was meaning, I think, though, the other portion, the private residential,
yes,
is that
the private
rooftop?
residential? Yeah. So this will be like, I'm not sure exactly how many feet up, but probably like another 4 feet above that publicly available, so that there's a little,
so
there's a little separation
Okay.
between that. But it's not supposed to be a large. It's not going to be like those five stories up.
Quick
above it.
question on this.
Sure.
There's like seating area here. Is there any retail space on those public areas or no?
Underneath, yes.
Underneath it. Okay.
Underneath it, but not on this seating area and stuff. So,
Okay.
what they kind of expressed to me during the approval process is that, this could be used as additional seating for restaurant spaces, things like that. So we would anticipate that would most likely be allowed. So
the public space is in lieu of green space then?
not necessarily. It does allow, there is a portion of the property that is green space. So one of the aspects in the previous, or in all the memorandum of understandings and the new development agreements that you guys have inputted, that there has to be, and I apologize if I butcher what it was called, like a central feature. So a central feature that ties the commercial and the residential together as part of that memorandum of understanding. And that's what this is.
Okay.
There is still the requirement for, I believe, 20% of the site to be open space, which we do include their outdoor amenities, so pools, pickleball courts, those types of things. So going back to the site plan, for example.
And I think they've exceeded that.
Oh, they
correct?
definitely have. They do have this frontage along Little Cottonwood Creek. They will have some setback along Galleria Drive here due to the there's large power poles that go along here, so it has to be set back a little bit further than what is traditionally required in that zone. Also along behind the retail area A, there's going to be additional seating area. So they definitely have met that 20% aspect. Okay, sorry, I keep flipping through slides here. Okay, so this is just kind of a couple renderings of that rooftop space. I can zoom in on these a little bit too, so you can see them a little better. So you can see the tables, chairs, kind of green space. And then, yeah, this will just be closed off and over to the private residential portion. Then above, that's just kind of a regular view of that. And then this is the last building. There will be a small component of retail here. This is also, I believe, where they'll have their leasing office when the project's all complete. It's just a smaller building. Okay, so the Planning Commission approved held a public meeting and voted 5-0 to approve the master site plan and conditional use permit on October 7th, 2021. 65 notices were sent to all the property owners within 500 feet of the subject property and all affected entities. I believe we had, I can't cite exactly, but I think we had a couple people come in and speak to the item, but it wasn't like a large number of people. So with that, the Planning Division staff is recommending that the City Council adopt the resolution authorizing the mayor to sign the memorandum of understanding for the 4800 Lofts mixed-use project at 447 West, 4800 South.
Question?
Questions, comments?
There are no issues with water or sewer or any of the infrastructure. That was all passed.
That was all passed. That was all reviewed during the master site plan application. We send every application through what's called a planning review meeting that goes to every single department in the city. And they reviewed and signed off on all of them.
Is that an area though that would have an updated, we are looking to update the sewer, or is it just already okay, good to go?
I don't recall. Okay,
Okay,
we'll
sorry.
let Danny speak to it.
Yeah.
This has been master planned for a while. We
Right.
knew that there would be higher densities coming, and all of those pieces, especially the sewer, has been updated to meet the future needs in generally in that area. So
Okay. I figured it
we're
was.
ready for it.
All right. I had a, oh, do you want to go? You want me to ask questions?
Go ahead. I'll wait.
I have a quick question, and this is just more to be a little bit more transparent. Can you talk a little bit about the MOU we did for the Kmart site? Was that under the mayor as well, or how was that?
I believe it was also, I believe you guys also authorized the mayor to sign
Okay.
the memorandum of understanding. This is the exact same process. The documentation, the format of the MOU is almost a carbon copy of the Kmart one, just with those two other added pieces for the emergency access and the publicly open space.
Okay. That was my question. Thank you.
Definitely.
So I have a question. Why are we being presented this when it's not a legislative? So I don't understand that. Maybe GL can give me some clue on that. I mean, when we okay a project like this, it's going to look like we're what? Yes.
I agree with you because we're voting on something we really don't have any
And it
opinion.
makes
We can't
us
make an
council
opinion on it.
members, it makes us council members like,
Let
go.
I'll try to explain a little bit real quick, and then I'll turn it over to GL. You guys aren't approving the project. We'll be straight up honest. You're not approving the project. That's what I was trying to make clear in the presentation. This was already approved by the Planning Commission. Your role,
so why are we even looking
right?
at this?
Your role is because the Planning Commission cannot enter into contracts. Only the legislative body can enter into contracts. And so we are making sure that we get these teeth. I like to use teeth analogies, I'm noticing.
Yes, you do.
So we have these
Sometimes
teeth
it's
on
gums.
This, and gums, teeth. These are not gums. These are teeth to the developer saying you shall develop this project in this way, as it was deemed by the Planning Commission. Anybody in the future that may come forward, they have to develop this project in this way. These have to be, these spaces have to be open. It has to be developed in these two phases. It has to have that emergency access. That is what you guys are signing off on, is that the Planning Commission made this decision and you're saying, I'm not going to say anymore.
We're approving the
because
guardrails.
You're approving the guardrails.
We're not approving the project. We're approving the strict guidelines, parameters. You've been
So
Still,
this is one of those issues that there's not a really good solution. And the issue is when you have mixed use horizontal, everybody's clear on what that is, right? You've got separate buildings, not the same building. When you build vertical, you have to build that ground floor to build the rest of it. So you
Right.
get your commercial. Here, the problem is, how do you get your commercial? And I'm not speaking to any specific developer, just the circumstances of horizontal use. If you're a developer and you're going to put in residential first, because that's where you can fill it up, there's a big demand for that. What's the incentive for you to come back later and actually build retail or commercial? And this is trying to incentivize that by having an agreement that says you're going to need to build it. That's all this is. It is somewhat perfunctory. I don't love it. It's just the way we have it. And it's about the best we could do at this point. My preference would be to have some sort of ordinance provision that says, this is how you'll do it. And then the mayor could sign off on it and you would never have to see it. Yeah. But as you've seen tonight, you've gotten a lot of questions. You've had a lot of questions about the details that are already approved.
Yeah, so we're being asked to move something forward that we can't do anything about.
What I could do, which I think would probably help when you actually, assuming you do vote to sign this at the next meeting, is we can put if you look at the agreement, I don't know how many of you have actually looked at the agreement, all those things that have already been approved, we could put in the whereas clauses and simply say, whereas the planning commission has approved this and approved this and approved this and approved this, and leave for you all that you're actually approving. If that would, I think that would,
Yes.
that would make me feel better if I was you. So maybe we can do
Yes.
the same thing here. And then it's clear who did what. And then we probably have it so where you're more satisfied with it.
Yeah, and I think we have an opportunity to kind of get into the teeth of it all.
Yeah.
With GL, and then kind of come back to the council before the next meeting.
Yeah,
mean, there's
we can
time.
help.
There's time.
We can assist with the drafting and just put those things. It'll be the same language, but it'll just be in a different place in the agreement. That'll make it clear that the planning commission has already approved the project.
So if you're mad, go to the planning commission.
And Brett
We can do
and the
that.
mayor.
Are the applicants here that want this project? Okay.
Yeah.
So if we were to say, no, we don't like this project, then what would happen?
So you'll get sued and we'll lose.
That's exactly what I knew where GL was going to go with that. Comes a lawsuit.
I know what I figured,
And
but
can
I
I-
wanted you
No,
to
it's a good
say
question. And that's the problem that horizontal use kind of poses is how do you get this? How do you make that clear that you're going to have to do the commercial and retail? And it's not, you have to understand from a developer's perspective, a lot of things change during a project. It could be a couple of years before you really get things going and underway. And then what happens with the economy? And now you've got commercial requirement, but you don't have anybody out there wanting to come into those commercial places. So it's a tough thing for them as well. And our point is, this is a difficult problem. This was the best solution we have so far. So we're asking you to go with this solution when we come back the next meeting and just recognize that your role in signing this, because it's required by the ordinance, are those things that Zach touched on, those the public spaces, that type of thing. That's all you're really approving.
And I want to commend GL and all the previous city attorneys that you guys have had in the past, in that you guys have not had to deal with a lot of administrative decisions in the past where your hands are tied and you have to vote on something, like the planning commission often has to do. A lot of their decisions are administrative, and if it meets certain criteria, they have to vote yes. GL has buffered you guys from having to do that by placing that under the land use authority. And so you guys are really, this is just a different role for you guys. A lot of cities, like my city, Midvale, for example, they have to switch hats back and forth throughout the night on what's a legislative item, what's an administrative item.
Yeah.
And that can be very confusing for them. So I think GL and the city attorneys have done a really good job kind of buffering you from that so you guys can really focus on your legislative items. So
Also, the other thing that comes into play here is the form of government. There are other forms of government who have a mayor, but not a strong mayor. And in those instances, the city council actually does have administrative responsibilities as well as legislative responsibilities. So there's a lot of crossover in those cities.
I think that gave a lot of clarity, at least for me. Any other questions?
Do we want the applicant to come up at all or no? No, we don't need to.
Unless you guys have specific
I'm
questions
fine.
in the
No.
committee of the whole. Otherwise, I think they'll be here for adoption that night.
Thank
So-
you guys.
And you
Sorry.
mentioned really
for being
quickly,
here.
you
Or
mentioned
you guys can be in the
they
hot
put the
seat.
residential in first, then the commercial?
No.
Or- sorry,
So,
say it one more time.
Yeah, so I'll go back.
Okay, perfect.
So the blue is phase 1. So they will put in, there's this retail building. Here, I can do this because I've been doing it all night. So there's a retail building. This is entirely retail. This will be part of phase 1. This building here encompasses.
Your pointer's gone, so
Just
I don't know if you're pointing to something.
Yes, I am. That's so weird. And it won't let me put.
You can leave it zoomed out. That's fine.
Okay, that's fine. So yes, this retail building is completely retail. That has to be built as part of phase 1.
Okay.
This building here includes residential and retail. And that has to be built in phase 1. And I apologize. Let me.
And the retail has to be actually filled. Like people need. No, it does not.
No, has to be built.
Built, but
Yes.
not necessarily.
Can you talk a little bit more on why we require that? First, yes.
The phases.
The phases of, because I think that's kind of where the hang up is
Sure. So the
a
reason
little bit the
why
history behind it.
the reason why we want these separated into phases, kind of like GL touched on, we don't want them to build, because I could see at some point, if we didn't have this, that they build this residential building here and say, oh, we're going to build this retail portion later. And then they come in and provide another building permit for this one, which, let's see, phase 2 building B has a majority of the units of 228 units.
Right.
So then they come in and apply for their building permit for building 220 or the 228 unit building. And then they're like, oh, okay, we can't do the retail anymore. So we're just not going to build it and we're going to move on, sell the project and bump that down the road. This in the memorandum of understanding says you shall build this retail both here and here, along with the smaller building. And then once these are built, then you can apply for your building permits for this larger building with the smaller retail attached to it as well.
And we want retail because it provides a better tax base.
Well,
Is that-
not necessarily tax base. It creates that mixed use feel.
Okay.
It allows for
So it
those
hits
users. It's really to make sure that the project is a mixed use project
I understand.
and is not a
Simply residential.
multifamily project at super high densities
And
with
even-
no services.
And these are all rentals, if I'm understanding correctly.
Correct.
Even for existing areas. I mean, I used to live in apartments right there. And ever since Moe's closed, and if you ever went to Moe's, a delight. I mourn it daily. It's gone. But that was the real only walkable retail in that area for a huge population of people living in that high density area. So I'm excited for the retail for those residents who already live right there. Because right now there's nothing to walk to. May Rose Diner. Rest in
What I
peace.
think a big
Yeah.
part of, and what I kind of wanted you to touch on a little bit is that in the past we haven't had, well, and not necessarily Murray, right? But there has been development that comes in and they don't even put in the retail. So we wanted to make sure that we were getting that in the first phase. And right, that's kind of what the idea
Yeah,
was even
definitely.
before Kmart
Yep.
and the
And for-
reasoning for it.
For example, there are already 2 tenants that will be coming in to the Kmart site. I don't think I'm at liberty to disclose who they are yet, but but they already are filling in their retail with users because that MOU is saying you shall have this built within 5 years. I believe is what's in it. You have to have this built within 5 years. The Kimballs aren't going to just let it sit and they're going to pay taxes on empty buildings. They may, but they're getting users is what I'm trying to say.
And that's one of the questions from a resident talked about is the commercial space. And I circled that, and I'm very curious, what experience does the applicant have, or what strategies will they use to ensure the commercial portion of the project will be successful? So that was one of the questions I had. And also using the reason from the same gentleman, he says, I think using the distance from the rail station as a justification to allow greater density west of I-15 is unwarranted. So I had a question about that also, because from the project to the track station, which I had a question when the legislative people were here, I had a question about the distance that it
Sure.
doesn't warrant it. It's
So,
not walkable to the track station. And so that's what.
And I will say currently, that's true. Us as planners, we need to look 20, 30, 50 years in the future and what this neighborhood looks like in the future. So yes, it may not look or feel walkable right now, but this will help to create that a little bit more. Remind me of your second question.
It was just about the commercial.
Oh.
And what experience the
Okay.
applicant has
Yeah.
in doing commercial.
I would definitely bring that up to them during. Oh, please, Jared wants to.
Sorry, I'm just gonna, I don't want to muddy the waters at all because I think the explanation is perfectly clear. So keep in mind, I think what you need to keep in mind is that tonight it's committee of the whole. You're just discussing the issues here, right? When you're asked to vote on it, you're going to be asked to vote on not the project and not even on the memorandum of understanding. You're going to be asked to vote on a resolution allowing the mayor to sign it, which he has to do by ordinance.
Right.
So it's a foregone conclusion. But
I needed
to
bring
that
these up
point,
for the citizens.
yeah, and I think to speak to that point, I'm going to remind you of something that Zach brought up real quickly in the beginning. We have adjusted the densities and parking requirements and even the commercial requirements for these kind of projects in this area. This project was vested as an application before we made those adjustments. So for example, if it were coming in under the new ordinance, it's in the MCMU West sub-district. Yeah. So it would get 40 units to the acre, significantly about half of what it's planned at. It would have less commercial requirements because we recognize there's not a great need for so much commercial there, and it would have more parking available to it. And your MOU would look a little different, but it was vested already under the old code, and they went the distance to provide all that open space and provide that parking and make it work. So that's really where we are. And all the things that are in that MOU that you're going to be voting on a resolution about are covered in the master site plan that was approved for this. They're already part of what's required. The Planning Commission just needs a way to say, we need a more effective method as planners when it's going through the process of getting building permits. We need a really easy way to look at it and say, no, you agreed in this contract with the city that you would not get any permits for phase 2, not a single one until phase 1 is done. So don't come and ask for those permits. And we have an easy way to point back to it. That's what it's for.
Quick question, because I didn't see it in the packet. Do we have the original application? Usually we get those within our packet, and even who's been contacted in terms of like the neighborhood.
So this does not get a public hearing. It's a business item. So yeah. So, and because we weren't, I'm trying to say this delicately, because we're not reviewing the project.
Right.
I didn't want to include the details of the project.
Sure.
Because that's not
Yeah,
what we're
I think
reviewing.
that's clear.
Okay.
We do need to, GL has, I think, one more thing to say, and then we do need to move on.
Real
That's fine.
quickly, I just wanted to say that in terms of your first question about commercial and their ability, we don't legislate that either. We simply provide the means, and if they can do it, they can do it. If they can't, they can't. And so to ask them about their financial and their experience and things like that would probably be inappropriate at a situation like this. Now, there are other times when we do. If we were putting money into the project, we want to make sure that it succeeded. We would have a provision like that. But right now, we don't necessarily bring them up and say, how can you do this?
Thank you. And thank you for all the clarifications on what we are doing and what we're not doing and what it all means. I know it is something outside of our practice that we're used to. So I appreciate all the questions.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
And I appreciate it. I will say that unfortunately I won't be here to present it at the next meeting. Jared will be presenting it. I will be at the National Planning Conference in San Diego.
Excellent.
So
Learn lots.
I will bring lots of info back for you guys. So
Sounds great. Thank you.
good night.
All right. Our last item here for Committee of the Whole is Robin's presenting discussion on an ordinance amending section 2.62.120 of the Murray City Municipal Code relating to employee holiday vacations. Hi, Robin.
Good evening. Before you is an ordinance amending employee holidays to add Juneteenth National Freedom Day as a paid city holiday. Last year, the federal government established Juneteenth as an official federal holiday, and this year Juneteenth was adopted by Utah as an official state holiday to be observed on the third Monday in June. The city's current holiday schedule provides 11 and a half paid holidays and 3 personal preference days for a total of 14 and a half paid holidays. This amendment proposes adding Juneteenth in place of one of the 3 personal preference days. This year is kind of unique. The personal preference days are added. They're kind of dumped into employees' payroll leave banks at the beginning of the year. So many employees have probably already used their personal preference days there because they're use it or lose it. So this year we would propose not to take away any of the personal preference days that have already been awarded, but instead keep them. So it would be a small fiscal impact this year. Police and fire are provided in lieu of holiday wages. So we would compensate them just to keep things equitable between career service and public safety employees. The fiscal impact would be around $41,500. And so I can answer any questions you guys have.
Our personal preference in addition to annual.
Yeah, so employees have sick leave bank, vacation bank, personal preference days, and then the holidays.
Great. Thank you. Any questions? All right. I think this is really exciting. So I'm glad that you're bringing it forward. Thanks, Robin.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. We will adjourn if there's no objections, and I'll see you back at 6:30.